A speaker will present on the leading in the era of generative AI. So with that, I'm going to start with the bio of our speaker. We have Mr. Brian Chua, who is the CTO of Strategic Account Microsoft, and he's also the co-founder of ShopBack, an app used by over 38 million users in 10 markets today. He forged a different path from a senior leader to a more executionary role to get closer to what he loves. Technology while making time for his young family. Brian's super passionate about all things AI and security. He's well placed to speak about his passion for technologies and is the best person for us to engage in a conversation about leading in the era of generative AI. With that, let's put our hands together and welcome Brian.
Hi everyone. So, for today, I'm going to share with you about what Microsoft is actually working on in the generative AI world and how are we seeing that, in terms of our products and services, and why I come into here is also because of my prior experience as a startup co-founder, and how all these services can potentially help you and be more competitive, be more productive and stuff like that. So, just a quick quite a short introduction. I only have 15 minutes. There are like 40 slides. But the world is changing, right? So, and with the world changing, the security part and the world is getting more connected. We all have mobile phone. And even the slowest industry in the world right now is actually rapidly evolving, right? So, for people who don't know about ChatGPT or OpenAI, you've been living under the rock for some time. So the AI technology is here, right? Whether you use it or not, your competition is using it, your own customer is also using it. So what does it mean to your business, right? So at Microsoft, we do see a lot of impact. We do see that a lot of customers are using Azure OpenAI, right, to actually advance in some of the, whether it's a contact center, whether is it, doing things like multilingual chatbots and able to understand quickly on how to the agent actually respond to the particular customer. Prior to picking up the phone, they actually get a quick summary of what the customer is. So this impact is real, right? So, and I've been working with two of the Chinese companies, which I share with some of you, that actually are interested to learn how OpenAI can actually evolve, how does their own customer and their own company. So how are we going to take this opportunity forward? Right. So before I actually share a little bit more about why Microsoft do this and why we invest in some of these technologies and stuff like that. So our core mission is actually to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. So it's one organization at a time, one team at a time, and one developer or person at a time. So with that, actually Microsoft invests heavily in AI. Back in 2017, we do have our own a supercomputer when the whole world is have another hype. And we also we also committed to actually spend quite a lot of investment and the people and the talent in responsible AI, which I'll touch about that later on. And how are we being used as trusted by the AI leaders like OpenAI in terms of our infrastructure, right? So our scalability, our ability to put all this hardware together for the GPUs and stuff like that. Later on, NVIDIA is actually speaking, so you can ask them about that. So I'm not going to touch about all the products that we have. Microsoft have tons and a lot of products and services. But I'll touch on briefly on some of the products which I think your business or your developer or your customer will definitely need, right? So let's touch on one by one, right? Microsoft Clouds run on trust. And I would like to introduce 3 tenets that we actually focus on and take this very seriously, right? So your data is yours. Right, we split this by using our own Active Directory called the AAD, Azure AD, and it's your tenant. We cannot see it, it's your data. Second one is your data is also not used, right? Since it's not used for our model and stuff like that, we actually use the public data set to actually train some of the model that I'll share later on how are we going to do this. And the third one is your data is definitely protected by some of the most comprehensive like regulation, compliance, security controls, right? So these three tenets you will see a lot in the slides, but I want to highlight this because it touched on all the different clouds, right? So we call this Microsoft Cloud, not Azure. Right? When I talk about Microsoft Cloud, people think about Azure only. So Microsoft have a lot of clouds, right? So the first one that I'll be briefly touched on is digital and app innovation. So for the developers, right? Any developers? Yeah, of course. Of course you are a developer. So GitHub is no stranger to any developer, right? So even me myself, when I started in the schools, my first account, like, it started like way back when I was in NUS. So GitHub is a place where developer community comes together, share the code, build things together and stuff like that. We do have an enterprise version, right? So if companies does want it, the source code to be hosted in their own tenant and stuff like that, there is a way to do that. But what's exciting about this is that there's a GitHub Copilot, right? So it's a way to auto-generate the code, but of course, it's a way for the developer to focus on meaningful work. So how many times the developer have to write like a login function, a forget password function for every new projects and stuff like that. So all of these mundane code are actually can be auto-generated. So we even have studies, right? So to prove that developers who use GitHub Copilot are actually 75% more happy, right? Because they feel that they are more satisfied with the work that they are given, and they can focus a lot more time on the problematic the work. And in fact, it removes a lot of bugs, right? So developers spend a lot of time when they got stuck with bugs that they created themselves, ironically. But GitHub Copilot can actually help you, can help the developer to actually be more productive. So if you are SME, definitely sign up for this one. It's relatively not very expensive. The other part of this is business application, which I don't think many people knows because it's pretty new. New in the sense it's in the cloud, but Dynamics is actually there's a different version of it. There's an on-prem version as well. But I want to introduce you to the Dynamics 365 Copilot, right? Just now I give you a case study, right? So imagine now the agent pick up the phone. No, not agent, you pick up the phone. So you call the contact center, right? So you actually, before the agent pick up the phone, you get a 360 view of the customer, whether they complain a lot, in the last 5 days or in the last month, how many times have you called the contact center, whether the person prefer Chinese or English speaking, whether this person is also very particular about certain services. So all these things are come into play when you use our Dynamics 365 Copilot, right? It's a way to interact with the data naturally using the way you preferred, and then you pull in all the different data that is previously stored, right? So you can be talking to the customer before. There's a transcript somewhere sitting in some off-the-shelf places. I cannot name the competitor. So yeah, so there is a way to actually link out to other platforms and to get more insights, right, out of all this. So definitely check out Dynamics 365 Copilot, this feature. The other part is infrastructure, right? This is the Azure part that a lot of people are very familiar with. But what many people do not know is OpenAI relies on Azure AI infrastructure, right? It's a very particular area of infrastructure that we put all the GPUs together, thousands of them, link them together, where they train the large language models to actually, to the point that you see today, right? Of course, Microsoft invests in OpenAI, and we do provide all this infrastructure for them at probably at a discount. So AI infrastructure is not new, right? So we have been building this like since when there is cloud, right? So the reason why we need this AI infrastructure is because there's a need to scale into an enterprise level, right? This AI model needs to work reliably. This AI model also, there's a need to actually monitor it and to make sure that it is generating the right result at the right speed. The latency is well taken care of by us and stuff like that. And most of our applications are using like AI infrastructure. So you probably don't use Edge, right? So how many of you actually use Bing Chat? Bing Chat, right? So using Bing Chat, you actually use Azure AI infrastructure naturally, right? So in fact, only Azure have A100 and H100 GPUs that is in our infrastructure, and we are powering so many customers that's already using these services. Like, oh, I have 5 minutes, so let's go. So I want to quickly touch on Microsoft 365 Copilot, where actually you will see that the word Copilot appears in every apps that we have. So imagine now you have a financial data in your Excel, you want to translate it to PowerPoint. Interact with Microsoft 365 Copilot will automatically build the presentation for you, right? So it's not, say, it'll be a perfect presentation, but roughly 75% done, right? So you do not need to go and read the whole 200 columns of a financial spreadsheet. So, and because of our backend, we utilize things like the Dataverse, and your data is your data. So it also sit within your tenant as well. So that's why it's very important there. Another one is on security. So security is something like, I think a lot of people don't want to talk about, but yet it's very important in our industry, right? So as an SME, you want to grow, understand, but there's no time to think about, oh, let's do it the proper way. But you must think of it as, if you don't want to do it right today, do you have time to do it right in the future, right? Defend these securities attacks are getting more and more sophisticated. So you need to be constantly learning. You also need to make sure that you're using the right tool. So how are we looking at this and envisioning it to actually co-pilot it with the security experts, right, to be more efficient? Right, so as you guess it, we have Copilot for everything. So Microsoft Security Copilot is a way to interact with some of the data that is in our services. So I don't want to be too salesy about all these services, but there's a few services that which I think definitely you need to think about if you don't have. So first thing is Microsoft Sentinel. So even though you are not using cloud, even on-premise, you can definitely use it to monitor your VMs, your virtual machine, and make sure that you are protected and stuff like that. The other one is Microsoft Defender for cloud. So, and with all these logs, it comes very complex, right, to monitor. So the security experts actually got lost on all this package, packet and diagnosis and stuff like that. So Microsoft developed this security copilot to allow the security expert to talk to the data, right? Essentially, that's the same thing, but using a natural language way, right? So definitely check it out. So I'll just quickly jump through a few slides. So every app now needs to be intelligent, right? Even the chatbot today is pretty intelligent. Right? So how are we going to, make sure that when you build your apps, can be intelligent as well, right? Quote unquote intelligent. Some of the services here, you might see that, okay, this is pretty generic. So I'll just move on to the next one. So there is a services for every kind of people in the organization. So let's say if you do not know how to code, if you want to build an app, but yet you still want to touch on, tap on the OpenAI, Power Automate and Power Apps allows you to stitch all this together. Power Automate is like a way to say, oh, if this happened, trigger that. If that button click, touch that. Power Apps is a way to put that together into the front end, into your mobile phone, into a website, right? So in fact, some of the customers do that for our public service website and using that to connect to the database, which is very useful. So some of the services is like, if you have a form, like a PDF, you want to scan, we do have a form recognizer. We also have speech recognition, vision recognition, and stuff like that. Okay, so enough sales talk, so let's move on. So Microsoft Cloud runs on trust, right? So before that, I talk about responsible AI, right? So maybe I have an analogy, right? So what is the most important function of a car? Does anyone know? It's the brakes, right? The most important function of a car is the brakes. So back in 2017, when Microsoft invests in responsible AI, the main thing is to have an AI to monitor the AI, which is called responsible AI. And we come up with a bunch of tools, right? Internally, even externally, you can see some of the things that we are doing in GitHub. But it's quite sophisticated in a sense. But let me briefly touch on some of this. So how to make sure that the AI is is ensure fairness, right? So make sure that the model build is actually accurate and fair for everyone, and it's not it's not a copycat of one another and stuff like that. How to make sure there's a responsible AI scorecard, right? Whether you can present the model to your non-technical folks in your senior management. How do they know the accuracy? How do they know whether is it good for the business value and stuff like that? So we do have some processes and some of the practice that put into play put in the public as well. But if you want to find out a bit more, we can definitely chat about that one. Not sure how much time I have, so let me quickly jump through some of the things. So if you are ready to start today, and let's say you want to get started somewhere and stuff like that. So definitely this is a slide to be thumbs up, I know. So one thing I want to highlight is Microsoft for Startup Founders Hub. So let's say if you are SME, you have a different scale and stuff like that, and you want to try Azure, definitely try this out. Apply this online. It's automatic, and it's up to 150K credits. Thank you.
Very much, Brian.